Welcome to the Fiscal Fortress. Michelle.meiming, a distinguished lawyer, and Eric.chung, a veteran hedge fund manager, deliver insightful commentary on finance and the law and actionable advice. The Fiscal Fortress, where wealth meets wisdom.
Hello, Michelle. It's great to see you again. I'm really looking forward to this episode.
Yes, same here. How you doing, Eric?
Yeah, doing well. It's Friday. Going up to Tahoe again with my family. It's a big commitment, skiing. As you know, as I mentioned in previous episodes, both of my kids are on the ski team. We go to Palisades. But I won't lie. When I was younger, I really, really enjoyed snowboarding and skiing going up to Tahoe. But now I just feel like an Uber driver, basically, on the weekends.
Oh, they're lucky to have you, Eric. I haven't taken my kids skiing yet. That just seems like way too many steps and way too much packing.
It is a lot of work, to be perfectly honest. But it's, they have fun. My wife also loves it, so it's all good. How about you? How was your weekend and your week?
Week was busy, and I think for the weekend we're just going to catch our breath. Weekends are still busy with schedules and the kids, but I am definitely looking forward to in a week from now we are going to spend a few days in Las Vegas, so that would be fun.
Oh, wow. Do you
Yeah.
guys play any of the games in Vegas, or are you guys show
No.
people, or what are you guys planning on doing?
I think the goal is there's only a couple days while the kids are off, so we're just gonna eat and we're going to watch shows. No gambling.
Okay. Wow. The food is really good
So
in Vegas,
boring.
actually. Well, it's not for everybody.
hmm We're with kids, so somebody's still got to watch them.
That's true. That's absolutely true. Well, for today's episode, we were going to talk about a topic that is, I think, very, very relevant. And we're recording this on a Friday, and typically it takes us a few days to get this out. But the last few weeks, a lot has been said about AI and specifically DeepSeek. That company made a big splash, and I was thinking that we could focus today's discussion on artificial intelligence and how that'll impact investing and even national security in the future.
I think that's a fascinating topic. I'm happy to cover that and chat about it today. It's definitely on people's minds.
Have you been following what's been happening? Like, how up to speed are you on the latest AI news?
Well, I have definitely, the sentiment has changed. At first, I would say even just a few months ago when I heard, people would ask me if I've been adopting AI in my practice, I would just absolutely roll my eyes and just think there's no way AI could be useful to me. But that's changed. It's actually, I've gotten to try it, and even though it's not going to substitute my experience and judgment, I think that it does create some very interesting thoughts.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think one of the things that we'll talk about this episode is I think it's undisputed that AI will change the world. I really think that this technology is revolutionary. A lot of people are worried that it may become smarter than humans and sentient, be able to think and act on its own. I'm not sure about that. That seems like it's a little bit farther away. But I spent a lot of time using AI personally, but also for Lighthaven and doing research, and it is an extremely powerful tool that I think is similar to what the spreadsheet did for business. We went from doing longhand math to using calculators to spreadsheets, and I think this is on that order of magnitude.
I would agree. I think it's going to make people more efficient, but of course, it has to be used properly. If the software goes into the wrong hands, it's going to produce absolutely junk.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I think another thing that I think a lot about, obviously, right now there's a lot of money to be made in AI companies, and we'll talk more about specific companies. But AI investing and the promise of AI, the technology, I think are two completely different things. I think that's
Mm.
a really important thing to say. And that when you conflate the two, you could lose a lot of money. And I think that's something that we should explore.
I agree. I agree. The how AI has crept into our lives and whether or not to invest in that industry are two different things. It's important to make that. I think that's an important distinction. It seems like anything with AI now, people just think it can't go wrong. But it reminds me of the whole 20 something years ago when the internet was booming. Anything with the dot com, it seemed like it was going to make money, and we know how that ended.
That's exactly right. I mean, there's so much enthusiasm, and just to amplify your point, it was so crystal clear that this new technology, being able to have like the entire world's knowledge, at your fingertips on a computer, that was going to be groundbreaking. Essentially, everybody had like, you know, uh, the world's knowledge, like a library, a huge library, right there. And to your point, I remember, Webvan and Pets.com and Yahoo. These were super high flying companies, and
Hmm.
they were. I mean, I think the one difference is they were outrageously priced. I don't think any of them were profitable, yet they
Hmm.
were trading at massive amounts. Obviously that was 25 years ago, but compared to today's companies, they would be hundreds of billions, maybe $1 trillion valuation, like crazy valuations. Um, and the promise of the internet has been fulfilled. We use it every day, and on your phone when you're using Uber, you're using the internet. If you're obviously OpenAI and the current technology is built on that network. Software as a service, all the software use that's on the web, like all that stuff, again was built on top of the internet. But it would have been very difficult to pick a winner, to be truthful. And if you just blindly, you know, played roulette with this and just bet on Black 33, you could have lost everything.
Correct. Anything with a dot com, and same here that anything that says that it does AI is a dangerous trap.
Yeah, yeah, totally agree. What I'd like to do is I mean, give you one more kind of analogy, and then I can give some guidance on for people who want to invest in AI, some things to think about. And the analogy I would give is, in addition to the internet, I think another really good analogy is mobile phones. So about 15 years ago, this is again after the internet boomed and became successful. Uh, there was a time when everybody's using Palm Pilots, and that was like the it phone. But
Hmm.
then smartphones became a thing, and the Apple iPhone um, became popular, the very first iPhone. And with the benefit of 2020 hindsight, everybody now understands that essentially Samsung slash Google on the one hand and Apple on the other hand, they basically won that war. They become the mobile behemoths, and they're the last two in hardware. Samsung and Apple are the two remaining giants still standing. But what people don't remember is all the companies that were battling for market dominance that didn't succeed. And these included companies like Nokia, included Microsoft. You'll remember BlackBerry. Earlier I said Palm. Actually, even after Palm, BlackBerry became the de facto standard. Um, so I really meant BlackBerry, but they were in the mix. They were trying to create, they had it all locked up. In fact, BlackBerry,
Hmm.
and they were trying to create, a smartphone that was similar to the iPhone. So many companies, and then we're not even speaking about any of the Asian competitors, the Chinese and Korean companies, but there were all told, and I remember this well, probably 20 or 30, credible companies, including really big companies that were trying to go after this space. And fast forward to today, only two have survived. So I'm not saying that AI will be exactly the same way, but I'm just pointing out that it's not that clear. When you're looking forward, who the winners will be, and that's something that we should all keep in mind.
Hmm. What are your thoughts about China's quick entry into this?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I think what you're referring to is, there's a huge news cycle a couple weeks ago about DeepSeek, specifically DeepSeek R3. And for those of you who aren't into AI, basically to summarize, they really quickly essentially copied uh, ChatGPT o1, which is the latest American um, large language AI model that reasons. So the early AI models, basically you type in something, similar to like you would in Google, and it would give you an answer, right? But the newest large language models, the newest AI models, actually do some reasoning, meaning they take your question and then they think about it and they try to anticipate what other questions should I be asking myself? And they go through a chain of thought similar to how a human would before giving you the answer. And by doing that, they do a lot more research and the results are dramatically better. And the thing that really, really alarmed people is that DeepSeek was able to copy this very quickly because this O3 model from ChatGPT only came out a few months ago. And uh, American companies have been throwing hundreds of billions of dollars into training these cutting edge AI models. And this Chinese company purportedly, and there's some controversy about whether they're telling the truth, but purportedly they were able to create this AI model for under $10 million. And there's some controversy about whether they're exaggerating, and maybe that number is 100 million or 50 million. But I think it's pretty safe to say it's much, much less than what American companies are throwing in to develop our models. And these Chinese companies are doing it partially by copying, but a lot of companies are copying each other, especially in the AI space. I mean, ChatGPT, they train their whole model arguably by copying the intellectual property of people who have posted stuff on the internet. But they also were super innovative, and it's a little bit too detailed for this podcast, but they were very innovative and very smart in how they're able to train these models, and they were able to do a lot more with less. And that was really scary for the entire industry, and caused NVIDIA, as an example, to drop. I think they dropped in one day almost 20%, which was a massive amount of money. I think their market cap dropped like hundreds of billions of dollars in one day.
But can you explain why NVIDIA dropped when in fact from what I read, it was NVIDIA chips that actually were used to help the Chinese?
Yeah. So you're right. I mean, they have essentially this company DeepSeek was using purportedly older chips, not the latest and greatest NVIDIA chips, and that's the thing that's scaring people, because right now all the American companies are paying a premium. They're paying top dollar for the latest and greatest American chips, and these GPUs, graphical processing units, they are subject to export control to China because the U.S. government thinks that it's a matter of national security, that we can't have our adversaries using these chips to train their AI models. But lo and behold, they were able to train their AI models without using these like super high-end chips. And so there's a couple of big questions like, well, do these export controls actually work? Like if other people can basically copy and do more with less by being smarter and more innovative, they don't need these high-end chips. And then also in the United States, what is the demand for these super high-end chips, which are going to cost a lot more? And if other people can do more with less, then maybe NVIDIA won't be able to command the super premium prices on their chips, or there just won't be as much demand for it. That's at least what some people are worried about.
And then in terms of the export controls, even if the tariffs are imposed on places like China for these chips, I read how that whole tariff can be circumvented by sending these chips to a different country that sends it to China.
Yeah, there's been speculation. I mean, we both, listened to the All In podcast, and they talked about this, that there's some speculation that I haven't verified, but that somehow a lot of these chips are going to Singapore, but they're not necessarily being used in Singapore. They're probably, that's a waypoint where then they are being shipped to China. I don't know if that's the case, uh, but it stands to reason. Like if you and I were trying to get these chips and we couldn't get them directly from the United States, I mean, surely the first thing we'd think about is, well, could we buy it from another country, right, that has
Mhm.
them in a legal way, right? I mean, is there a way that suppliers in Singapore stock the latest NVIDIA chips, and then do these export regulations prevent them from shipping to their customers? Probably not, right? I would imagine that export laws govern U.S. companies, and that you wouldn't be able to like tell companies all over the world, what they can and cannot do. But I'm not an expert in this area. But it's a really important point, because it really I think it may be naive to think that in this space, given how important AI is, that the United States will be able to just shut this thing down by preventing these chips from going overseas. Like, it'll create a black market. There's so much money involved, right? Like, if you look at drugs as an example, where there's demand, like, you can't stop the people from getting these drugs one way or another. It may increase the cost, but again, if the Chinese are able to do amazing things for one fraction of the cost that we can, they may be willing to pay it. And also, it's a matter of national security. Every country now views this as an existential threat, or an advantage. And so it wouldn't be crazy that maybe the Chinese government, they just they accelerate their plans to build Chinese built Chinese chips. Or this is a nightmare scenario, maybe they try to they do expedite plans to invade Taiwan, so that they can get that semiconductor expertise, like those people, and those factories. This is all speculation, but this is I think the bottom line is, it's really, really hard to see how the United States will be able to maintain a sustainable lead here. I do think that we'll be able to stay one step ahead, maybe, but at what cost, right? Even if we were able to stay one step ahead, if it's only 2 or 3 months, is it worth spending hundreds of billions, trillions of dollars to build the latest and greatest LLMs, only to have the Chinese copy it? This is the thing that a lot of investors are wondering.
And then what about in terms of the open source AI? Is that part of makes copying easier?
Well, interestingly, open source, and Meta is both DeepSeek and Meta are open source. Um, I don't think it necessarily makes things easier. I mean, you can literally, if it's open source, you have the right to just literally copy it. But the reason I hesitate a little bit is that in the case of DeepSeek, they copied something that wasn't open source. ChatGPT, uh, O1, and they did this by essentially some very interesting tricks. You can basically link or access ChatGPT through software, an API. Basically, you can have your software use ChatGPT directly rather. And what they did, the DeepSeek team, is they basically just, you know, used that to test and to brute force and improve their own model. Um, so even without open source, I think the Chinese are going to figure out ways to stay in the game.
Yeah, it is definitely a national security issue now.
I want to go back to investing. The thing that a lot of people worry about is, is the Nvidia situation where their stock price, got cratered. Is that something that is a one-time event, or should people be diversifying away from AI? And I think that my advice to people would be to understand how the whole industry works. And so I think there's a bunch of different players in the AI industry, and I'm going to oversimplify, but there are data centers. These are the places where you've got all these GPUs uh, that are being operated by companies like Microsoft and Amazon. Those data centers are being powered by they're powered by electricity. So there's like companies like Constellation, and Constellation Energy operates nuclear power plants. Some of you may recall that Microsoft has been trying to they entered into a deal with Constellation to use the energy from 3 Mile Island to power AI, their data centers. They're obviously the chip makers. So I would say all of those folks are kind of like the picks and shovels of the industry. And I think those are pretty good investments actually still. There is a question about whether NVIDIA itself will have the edge, but I don't think there's any question that there is going to be some demand for the leading edge AI large language models. And therefore, there will be demand for the best GPUs, graphical processing units. The part of the industry that I worry about is these large language models. So the open AIs of the world, Anthropic, even Google. They've got their own Gemini. A lot of these companies have their own large language models. Now, those large language models are increasingly being commoditized, and there's just a gazillion of them. And as you pointed out, a lot of these are open source, and they're very, very good, and they're constantly improving every month. So I don't know that those will be successful businesses. It's hard to bet against those LLMs because a lot of them are embedded within larger companies that are profitable, like Google or Microsoft. But I'd be worried. I'd be worried if you think that, as an example, if you're invested, if you have the good fortune of having a private investment in one of these LLM companies, I personally would be really worried about that. One thing that we haven't talked about, and I think is potentially a good investment, are application companies. So with the internet, we saw the promise of the internet. It took a few years, but after a while, there were companies that were using the internet, like Uber, like Yelp, like social media. All the social media companies, right? They were built on top. They're application companies built on top of the internet. Extremely, extremely profitable. I think that'll happen as well for AI companies. There'll be companies that are creating applications that you just can't do without, right? And you can imagine what those are. We probably don't have time to, maybe that's the subject of another episode, but there's going to be incredible uses of AI, whether it's like translation or it's like helping you think about problems in a much more effective way, or a consultant. Maybe it'll unfortunately replace human consultants. All sorts of things that AI will bring about. And I think the companies that are successful in that application space, a lot of those will be very profitable.
Do you think that with the services that are free on ChatGPT and in Gemini, is it worth paying the extra $20 a month or so for the additional reasoning or advanced features?
That's such a good question. I think it's like it's very similar to, should I get the latest and greatest iPhone? I mean, I guess if you're a power user and you just have to have the latest and greatest, then have at it. But I'll tell you that the stuff that was being, that was top of the line in AI 3 months ago is now free. So every few months you're going to get, you won't get the latest and greatest unless you pay, but you'll get something that's probably 80-90% as good, that was just as good as something from 3 months or 6 months ago, for free. So like if you're a professional and you need the very best, I would say maybe consider it. I think that's probably a really good use case. Like I would. I mean, for investing, it's really helpful to have reasoning, and it's really helpful to, like, another app I use that we subscribe to is Perplexity. Some people think it's a Google killer because it'll actually do the searching for you and the research for you. That's something that I think is really worth it. But if you're a casual user, maybe you should just use the free applications.
So Eric, I used to hear that investing in the S&P 500 was a really safe bet, that you could just basically find an index that mirrors the S&P, and it's better than individually picking stocks. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely think there was some merit to that a long time ago, and before AI, that was reasonable because the S&P 500 is comprised of many companies, 500 companies in various sectors, various industries, and that's some form of diversification. Um, but I think today, the most of the profits, most of the gains from the S&P derive, or a significant portion of them derive from only a few companies, like 7 or 8 companies, and they're all AI companies. Companies like Microsoft and Google and Meta, Tesla, Amazon. These companies all have gone up because of AI only. Not only, I mean, they're all good businesses in their own right, but they've gone up a lot because of AI and the hype around AI. So I think one thing that's different is that there is a lot more concentration risk if you just simply throw in your money into an index than before, much more. And I think the truth is that if you invest in the S&P 500, you're essentially making a bet on AI, and you should know that going into it.
That's right. It seems like it's a safe mix, a diversified portfolio, but it sounds like at this point it's very AI heavy.
Very
And
AI
you would
heavy.
think that if there was a sudden correction, it would be a drastic reset, right?
Well, I mean, that's remains to be seen. So far, there hasn't been a massive correction. I mean, Nvidia, like that was a big scare that went down 20%. But as I mentioned, a lot of these other companies, these AI business units are baked inside of profitable companies, right? So I think that would be the one thing that might insulate things a little bit. And truthfully, there's still a lot of optimism about AI. So I can't say with 100% certainty that if the AI bubble bursts, if it is a bubble, that this will completely crater the stock market. But I think you and I are both old enough to remember that, in 2008, global financial crisis, internet bubble, I mean, older people during the Great Depression, I mean, the stock market is very volatile. It can absolutely drop 50, 60%. That has happened in recent memory. So I would just be cautious.
Sounds good. Lots to think about. Thank you for the insight on AI. And I think the key thing to me is that the concept and our use of AI is very distinct from AI investing.
100%. Well, that's probably a great place to park this episode. Great to see you. If anybody has any questions, feel free to comment. We would love it if you enjoy this content, if you would like and subscribe, and also just a promotion, something to offer listeners. If you are interested in receiving my book, I wrote a book on investing. I'm happy to send it to our followers, subscribers for free. Just simply email me, and I'm happy to send you a complimentary copy. My email address will be posted in the show notes below.
Mhm. Thank you for listening to our episode. And if you could just take a second to hit the like and subscribe button, it would encourage us to keep doing this because we know somebody's listening. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.